All right, well, we're going to work through the exercises for lesson 20 in Futato's Beginning Biblical Hebrew, and looking at these exercises, we'll start with activity B here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these words. I'm going to kind of explain the morphology, the spelling. Why do the letters and vowels, why is it spelled the way it's spelled? Are there any differences? Do we have weak verbs? Do we have strange things happening with shavas, that sort of thing? So this first one here, we've got liktov. Liktov is the lamed preposition with katav. And katav here is in the infinitive construct. We know that because we've got a shava in R1. We've got a holim in R2. And that is the pattern. Shava holim pattern is what we're used to for the infinitive construct. And so when we stick the lamed preposition on there, we would normally put a shava, but that puts us in this situation where we've got two shavas at the beginning of a word, and Hebrew doesn't like that. And if you remember your rules of shava, whenever you have two shavas at the beginning of a word, the first one reverts to a short vowel, and in this case, that's the hirik. All right, and so if we take the lamed hirik off, we can see our infinitive construct. Katav in the Qal Perfect 3ms would mean he wrote. So here it simply means to write. There's no real difference in the translation of the bare infinitive construct versus the lamed plus the construct. They both mean to write. Sometimes the lamed will be added to this form to indicate purpose or intention, but with no context here, you can't really translate the lamed any differently. So the translation here would just be to write. Number two is a similar situation. We've got another lamed preposition on the front of an infinitive construct. This is zachor, which gives us lizkor. And on both of these, you'll note that the second letter has a dagesh. In neither case, and that also happens in the third. But if you look at the fourth, there isn't a dagesh in the second root letter. That's because all three of these are begad kafat letters. And when a begad kafat letter occurs right after a closed syllable, or basically it's preceded by a consonant sound, it's going to take the weak dagesh. So this is not a doubling dagesh, this is a weak dagesh that a begad kafat letter will take when it follows a closed syllable. So, liktov, to write. Lizkor, this would be zachar, he remembered in the Qal Perfect 3ms, but the infinitive would just be to remember, and again, the lamed, it reverts to that hirik, because if it didn't, if it was just the shava, you'd have two shavas in a row at the beginning of a word, and Hebrew doesn't want that. Number three, same thing. We've got the lamed that has reverted to the hirik on zavach. Now the difference here is we've got a third guttural. And the third gutturals in the infinitive construct, when you would normally have a holim, they like to sneak this patach in there because especially the chet and the ayin, they have a strong preference for A-class vowels. So this would be pronounced lizboach, and from zavach, which means he slaughtered or he sacrificed, this would simply mean to slaughter or to sacrifice. Once again, the bait here with the dagesh, that is not a doubling dagesh, that's just the weak dagesh that goes in a begad kafat letter after a closed syllable. Number four, we've got lamed again, and it's still reverting back to the hirik because we don't want two shavas in a row. But this is just a regular looking infinitive construct. No begad kafat letters, it just looks exactly how we would expect. So we've got shava in R1, holim in R2, perfect. Limloch would be the pronunciation here. Limloch would be the infinitive construct form with the lamed preposition of what in the Qal Perfect 3ms would be he reigned as king or he ruled. And so limloch then would simply be to rule or to reign as king. Number five here is a little bit different. We've got the lamed preposition, but now it's a kametz. We'll come back to why that's a kametz instead of a shava or hirik. And then we've got shevet. Now when we look at shevet, we see the segel tav pattern. That's the pattern that we want to immediately recognize as the infinitive construct of a one yod vav verb. And so when we see segel tav, we can take that off, obviously take off the lamed kametz, and then add a yod at the beginning, and we get yashav. Yashav is he dwelt in the Qal Perfect 3ms, and so this infinitive form would just be to dwell. What we've got with the segel tav pattern here is essentially the same thing as a segelit noun. And in a segelit noun, you're going to have the first syllable accented. Again, pretend this lamed is not here yet. We're not ready to add it. So we would start with the shevet, this would be the infinitive construct, and then we would add the lamed shava prefix. But because of the way that syllables and accentuation works in Hebrew, whenever you've got a pre-tonic syllable, so a syllable right before the accent mark, which again, shevet is accented on the shin syllable, the syllable that is right before that, if it's open, Hebrew really wants a long vowel there. And so that is why the shava expands to the kametz, and we get la shevet. La shevet here simply means to dwell. But this kametz is basically a way of compensating for the fact that this pre-tonic syllable, again, the syllable right before the accent, this pre-tonic syllable doesn't have a letter closing it, and so it has a long vowel there. Number 6, we've got la ledet. La ledet is very similar to la shevet. We've got another segel tav pattern. So again, take off the lamed, kametz prefix, prepositional prefix, and then take off the segel tav and add a yod to the beginning. We're going to get yalad. And yalad in the Qal Perfect 3ms is going to be to beget or to father, something like that. If it's in the feminine, you can say to give birth to, but generally, if the subject is masculine, you're not usually going to translate that into English as to give birth to. You would translate it as to beget or to father. So yalad becomes ledet. Ledet then means to beget or to father or to give birth to, since there's no gender on an infinitive construct. And once again, this lamed preposition, which would be a shavah, it is open in front of the accented syllable, and that is a situation where Hebrew wants a long, well, again, I say long vowel. I know that Futato calls these medium vowels, but Hebrew doesn't want a short vowel. There is the idea, so we get the kametz. Number 7, we get borid to, and this one is really it's got a lot going on. So let's just start with it one piece at a time. We're gonna try to find our root here because we already know it's an infinitive construct, but let's just start with the fact that we know it's a verb. All right, so, but we got to figure out, is our root beit reish dalet? Is it reish dalet tav? Is it dalet tav holam? Not holam, dalet tav vav. Obviously that doesn't work. So do we have barad? Do we have radat? What do we have? What are we working with here? And what we're going to find out is that this is basically, the root is very, very hidden. So in this situation, what you need to do is you need to basically start at the beginning is what I would do. You know that the holam vav is probably a suffix. You can then ask yourself, do I ever get a tav holam vav suffix? And certainly not in any of the perfect or imperfect conjugations do we get that. Since we know it's an infinitive construct, we can probably just take the holam vav ending off as a subject or object suffix, what we call a pronoun suffix. That would leave us with beit reish dalet tav. So now that we've taken off the holam vav, is it more likely that tav is added to the ending, where our root would be barad, or should we look at this as beit added to the beginning of the root radat? Now, either way, it's neither. Like, either way, it doesn't work. Because, and you know this, again, this will be much harder in your Hebrew Bible, where you might run into roots that you've not learned yet. Here in the workbook, you know what verbs he's going to present, because he's not going to give you verbs that you haven't learned in your vocabulary. And you have learned no verb barad, and you've learned no verb radat. So something else is happening here. Beit is a common prepositional prefix that we see on infinitive constructs. So if we take this off, we get reish dalet tav, but that's not a root that we're familiar with either. So what could be going on here? Well, it's very tricky. What you've got is the root yarad, okay? Yarad is your root. And because yarad is a one yod vav, that first yod is going to drop out altogether. When that drops out, we're going to add the segel tav pattern to the reish and the dalet, and we get redet. All right, so redet is what we would normally see in the infinitive construct for yarad. But in addition to redet, we're adding this 3ms suffix. And any time that you add a vowel to the end of a Hebrew word, you're going to change the spelling of the vowels. Well, not any time, but oftentimes you will. And so what happens here is when we add this holam vav ending and then the beit preposition, we now have to repoint. We now have to redistribute the vowels here. So the first thing to add is the tav suffix, the segel tav pattern with the yod removed. That's going to give us redet here. With redet, we can then add the holam vav to the tav here for the 3ms suffix. And when we do that, we actually pull all of this accent to where we've just got reish shavah, dalet shavah, tav, holam vav. But again, here we've got two shavahs at the beginning of a word. If it were rid to, basically, is what we would have. So that's what you see here, rid to, and then we're going to add the beit preposition with the shavah. So it really depends on the order in which you kind of think through the changes. But if you start with the root, then you apply the segel tav pattern, then you apply the 3ms object suffix, then you apply the preposition. That's how you end up with this crazy spelling here. All right, and so it's very hard to recognize, but if you just go through that process of how many letters does a Hebrew verbal root have? 3. How many do I have? I have 5, so I have too many. What could be extra? You kind of work your way down to the root. All right, something similar is happening here in number 8. And you can tell that basically by the vowel patterns. We've got a shava, we've got a short vowel, a shava, and then a tav holam. So this again is going to be a one yod vav in the infinitive construct, which means if we take off the tav ending, we're going to, and we put back the one yod, we're going to get yada. So this is the root yada, which in the Qal Perfect 3ms would mean he knew. But here it's just going to mean to know. And with this object suffix, it's going to mean to know him. But with the bait preposition on the front, the bait preposition can either be like instrumental, or maybe means is the means by which something happens, or it can be temporal. So this could be like, at some event, that would be temporal. So at knowing him, or maybe something like once knowing him, having known him could be another way to translate this. Or if you want to use it as like a bait of means, the means by which something happens, you could translate this as by knowing him. Now you'll notice I'm translating that as, an ing verb there, not a to blank verb, because it just doesn't work in English. We don't use infinitives in English the way Hebrew uses them. And so if you were to try to translate this as a to blank verb, you get something like by to know him. And that just doesn't work in English. So in English, you would translate this more like by knowing him. And I forgot to translate number 7 here, but this would be yarad is, I think yarad is to descend or to come down. And so this would be like by, yarad. Oh, okay. I was going to say yarad is intransitive, I think. And so it can't have an object. Well, on an infinitive, this could be the subject of the action, or it could be the object of the action. So down here, when I said, by knowing him, it could also be by his knowing. So by the fact that he knew would be the idea there. Or we could make it temporal, saying when he knew, or at his knowing, like when he came to know, something like that. Number 7 would be at his going down, like when he went down, or by his going down, by him going down, something else happened. These infinitive constructs are really difficult to translate with no context. But hopefully as you try to do that, that'll help you work through how each component of the word contributes to the meaning. Number 9, we've got kivnoto here. And it's a little bit of a jumble as well. There are 6 letters in this one, and I need 3 in my root. So let's go chopping. What can we chop off of this? Well, again, we've got that to suffix. So the tav is probably a sign of a weak verb. There are 2 weak verbs that we've run into that add a tav to a root. The first one is the one yod vav, which we saw up here, where we get the segel segel tav pattern. The other time we add a tav to a root is in the third hey. The third hey verb, when it's in the infinitive construct, the third letter, which will be hey, shifts to a holam vav tav in the infinitive construct. So benot is going to be the infinitive construct form of bana. Bana is he built, so benot would be to build, and benoto would be him to build, or to build him, or to build it if it's non-personal. And then the kaf preposition can either be temporal, so while he built, or it could be, or while he builds. Again, infinitives don't have tense. While he builds, while he was building, while he built, or while building him, or while building it, or kaf can be a comparative preposition. I guess it is a preposition, and it can indicate a comparison. And so here, we would usually translate that as like or as. So like he built, or as, not as temporally. It could, actually it could be, but that's what we talked about before with while. So as he built, or as built it, something like that. Again, very difficult to translate when you only have the one word, but that's the idea here. Kaf preposition, bana becomes benot in the infinitive construct, and then you've got a 3ms suffix, which could indicate either the subject of the activity of the infinitive or the object of the activity of the infinitive. Again, the subject is the one doing the infinitive action, the one building in this case. The object would be the one directly affected by the infinitive action. So it would be the thing being built, like a building or a tower or something like that, maybe a wall. Of course, wall, choma, that would be feminine, and so 3ms wouldn't work, but you get the idea. Number 10, again, a lot going on here, but we've got a kaf at the beginning. Since kaf gimel lamed is not a root that we've learned, my guess is that kaf is the preposition kaf. So we take that off, we get galot, okay, so we've got the holem vav tav ending that indicates a third hey. If we shift the holem vav tav to a hey, we get gala. Gala meant to expose, to reveal, to uncover, has a lot of different senses. So this would be to expose, and then to expose it, or it exposing, again, subject or object. It or he is either doing the action or the action is being done to it or he. And then the kaf preposition, again, it's probably best to just gloss the kaf preposition as, because as can indicate either comparison, like him exposing, or like exposing him, or it can communicate the temporal contemporaneousness. So while exposing it, or while exposing him, or not while, as exposed it, or as he exposed, something like that. Number 11, we've got liroto. Liroto is, again, this oto ending. That's going to be, I shouldn't say oto because it won't always be 3ms suffix, but you see that ot in there, and that ot, again, is indicative of a third hey verb. So if we take off the holem vav tav, replace it with a hey, we get ra'ah. Ra'ah is he read in the 3ms Qal perfect. So here it's to read, and then the suffix would either be to read him, or to read it, or him reading, he reading, him reading, or it reading. And then again, the lamed preposition doesn't really add much to the translation. It may just indicate purpose or something like that. So in order to read it would be one way to translate this. Number 12, we've got la'as oto. La'as oto. La'as oto is going to be asa, he made in the Qal perfect 3ms, becomes asot, which is to make it, or to make him. And then the lamed preposition might just be in order to make it, or in order for him to make something. Number 13, this one is a little bit tricky. We've got latate, and here you just have to recognize that tate is the infinitive construct of natan. I've got here, if I can even get to the beginning of this, it's not letting me show the initial noon, but this first word over here, this is natan, which is the Qal perfect 3ms form that you learned in your vocabulary. We put that in the imperfect because we build the infinitive construct on the imperfect 3ms form. So we get yin tot, but of course this noon is closing a syllable, and we've got a syllable beginning right after it. So this noon is now going to assimilate into the tav, which gives us ye tate. Here this holem actually shifts to a sere, ye tate. Well, when we build so ye tate here is the Qal infinitive construct, or I'm sorry, ye tate here is the Qal imperfect 3ms form of natan. But then when we want the infinitive construct, we're going to remove the yod and the hirik, and we're going to be left with tate. So tate is to give, and then we're going to add a lamed, okay? But again, you might look at this and think, oh, that's a lamed with the definite article on something, but infinitive constructs don't take a definite article. What's going on here is this kametz is the shava, but remember we talked up with the shevet and those segel tav infinitive constructs. When the lamed preposition comes right before the accented syllable, Hebrew does not want a reduced vowel or a short vowel there, and so this actually expands to become the kametz, what Futato calls a medium vowel. All right, looking at number 14, we've got la leket. La leket here is the segel tav pattern of what we might think is yalach, but remember the Hebrew orphan verbs. Anytime you get to the root yalach, it's actually halach. Halach gets adopted into the one yod vav family. So this is halach, which is he went or he walked in the infinitive construct. So that just means to walk. And we've got the lamed preposition in front. So again, this would normally be a shavah, but because it's right before an accented syllable, leket, not leket, but leket, that's what causes the shavah to expand back into the kametz. Because in an open pre-tonic syllable, Hebrew does not want a reduced vowel or a short vowel there. All right, number 15, we've got kutseto. Kutseto. So kutseto is one of these unusual ones. Yatsa here, because the aleph quiesces, you might expect to get a segel tav pattern, but you can't have segel tav because when the aleph quiesces, it can't hold its own vowel. And so instead of segel tav, you just get a sere aleph tav, but it is from the one yod vav yatsa. Yatsa in the Qal perfect 3ms means he came forth, or he came out, or went out. And so here it would mean to come out or to go out. But we've also got the 3ms suffix here. Again, that suffix can represent either the thing or the person that's doing the action of coming out or going out, or it can be the object affected by that action. So something that, so he comes out it, or he goes out it. Now, come out or go out, that's intransitive. You can't have an object there. You would have to have this in one of the patterns that indicates causation. We'll get to that later, don't worry about it. But all that to say that in a verb like yatsa, this, which is intransitive, it doesn't take an object, you're probably going to be pretty safe, assuming that this is the subject. So if this is the subject, we could say him going out, or something like as he went out or as he goes out. Again, keep in mind the flexibility there on the tense. You cannot base the tense of sate here on anything but context. There's nothing in the form itself that suggests you should translate this as he went out versus as he goes out. All right, the infinitive itself has no tense, so you need to get the tense. You need to rely on other context in order to properly translate the tense here. All right, number 16, we've got bechachto. Bechachto is, here we've got another situation where we expect to see, we don't even expect to see. This is the result of a segel tav pattern. Now we don't have a segel here because the chet prefers the A class vowel. We don't have a segel here because the holam added to the end forces this segel to reduce to a shavah. But it would be a segel tav pattern. And if we put that one yod back in, which the segel tav usually indicates a one yod vav, we would get yakach, but yakach is not a Hebrew verb that we've learned. This is the other Hebrew orphan verb. La-kach gets adopted into, in this case, for the imperfect it was the one nun family, but for the infinitive, it conjugates more like a what we would expect from a one yod vav. And so the root here is lakach. Lakach means to take or to seize or something like that, to capture. So here it would be either, depending on how we translate this bait, if this is instrumental or temporal. If the bait is instrumental, it would be something like either by him capturing something, or by capturing it, or by capturing him, or in the temporal, it would be something like at his capturing, where his could either be he was the one who captured something or he was the one who was captured. So a lot of different ways to translate this, but you could get away with something like, by capturing it, or by his capturing of something, or when he captured it, or when he captures something. All right. Section C, translate the infinitive absolute. So again, the major function of the infinitive absolute in Hebrew is it's usually going to occur in conjunction with another verb, and it's going to serve to sort of emphasize that verb, I suppose. So the key word that we get there, you could use one or the other. We usually use the word certainly or surely. It just sort of intensifies or emphasizes the verb. So shamor here, this is our infinitive absolute. Shamor tishmor, tishmor here being the imperfect form. This is either 3fs or 2ms. So either she will surely guard, or you, masculine singular, will surely guard. Number 2, shaloch. This is from shalach. Shalach is he sent. Shaloch would emphasize tishlach. Tishlach here is either she will send or you, masculine singular, will send. So we would then get she will certainly send, or she will surely send, or you will surely send. You can see that basically what we're doing here is we're taking the actual verb and we're just adding surely or certainly before it because of the infinitive absolute. So tizkor, this is going to be she will remember or you will remember. She or you will surely remember. Telech, this is from halach. She will surely go or you will surely go. Teshev, she will surely dwell or you will surely dwell. Teda, this is from yada. She will surely know or you will surely know. Tivna, she will surely build or you will surely build. Tivkeh, this is from baka. She will surely weep or you will surely weep. All right, so number 9, tikle, from kala, to cease. Well, here would be to cease, but this would be either she will surely cease or you will surely cease. Number 10, nitain, either she will surely give or you will surely give. Number 11, tetse, this is from yatsa, so she will surely come forth, go forth, or you will surely go forth. And then number 12, Allah is to go up or to ascend, so either she will surely go up or you will surely go up. All right, let's double check here. B, C, E, and F. All right, so let's look at E. All right, so here we're just parsing. Qal, this is the Qal Infinitive construct. Again, construct is going to be the shava in R1, holem in R2. If this were infinitive absolute, we would see a kametz here. And usually we would see a holem vav instead of a holem, but the kametz is what gives it away. So no prefix, no suffix, it's just the 3 root letters. You get that in the Qal Perfect 3ms. You get that in the infinitive construct and the infinitive absolute, although sometimes the infinitive absolute has the vav in here as well. And as we're learning this week, you get that in the participle as well. The participle, Qal active participle masculine singular will be just the 3 verbal root letters. Number 2, we've got avadti. So here, the first thing I notice is actually the vowel pattern, kametz patak. That is just screaming to me Qal Perfect. And then once I'm thinking Qal Perfect, the T suffix jumps out pretty well also. So T is 1CS, so this is going to be Qal Perfect 1CS of avad. This would mean I served. Ektov, here the first thing I notice is the Aleph Segel. Right, this Aleph Segel, then confirmed by the holem R2 vowel, tells me that I am in the Qal Imperfect 1CS. If I take off the Aleph prefix, I get Ketov, or Katav, which is he wrote. But with Ektov, we're looking at I will write. Number 4, this is a little hard to see here, but that's 2 series in a row. So when you get a seri-seri pattern, remember that is going to be the Qal Imperfect form, Qal Imperfect conjugation of a 1 yod vav. In the infinitive construct, it's going to be segel segel tav, but in the Qal Imperfect, it's going to be seri-seri. All right, and so what I would do is I would take off the prefix and add a yod to the beginning. Here it's the same as with the prefix, so this is yarad, he went down. Yered would be he will go down. Number 5. We've got shevet, again, segel, segel, tav. This pattern here tells me that I'm in the infinitive construct of a 1 yod vav. So I'm going to take off the segel, segel, tav, I'm going to put a yod on the front, and I get yashav. Yashav is he dwelt, so shevet is going to be to dwell. All right, number 6, we've got nir-eh. Here, a couple things jump out at me, and they're both worth paying attention to. For you, it might be this nun hirik, which is usually what will jump out to me. On a Qal Imperfect 1CP form, so that's great. But then I also see the segel hey, and anytime I see a segel hey, I'm automatically thinking either Qal Imperfect or a participle of some masculine singular Qal active participle of some sort. So the segel hey confirms the Qal Imperfect 1CP of ra'ah, which is he read, so nireh would be we will read. Gelot, again, I see the holem vav tav suffix. At lesson 20, you pretty much know this as, well, you're still going to know feminine plural. If you know it's a verb, then holem vav tav should tell you that this is a third hey infinitive construct. But if you don't know this is a verb, you might be thinking feminine plural. Those are the 2 things that holem vav tav should really, flag for you. Either feminine plural, which it probably does flag feminine plural for you already because we're so used to that. But add in to that, holem vav tav also flags infinitive construct of a third hey verb. All right, so if I take off holem vav tav and I replace it with the third hey, I get gala. He exposed, he revealed. Here it would just be to reveal. So again, infinitive construct of gala. Number 8, amor. I've got the kametz in R1, which is what I would expect to see in a Qal Perfect, but I don't have the patach, and I've got too many letters here. So this is actually going to be the infinitive absolute, indicated by the holem vav over here. All right, amor. Amor is from amar. Amar is he said. So amor, in the infinitive construct, it would be to say, but the infinitive absolute is actually just going to intensify another conjugation of amar. So this would be something like, I guess it would depend on what the other verb in the sentence is. But it's from amar, and it is the Qal Infinitive absolute. Number 9, leket. I've got the segel segel tav pattern. If I just take that off and I add a yod to the beginning, I get yelech. But remember, yelech is not, yalach, I should say, yalach is not a Hebrew verb. That is halach adopted into the 1 yod family. So this is the Qal Infinitive construct of halach. This would mean to walk or to go. And then finally, number 10, again, I've just got this memorized. I recommend that. Just memorize tate as the infinitive construct form, Qal Infinitive construct of natan. And so that would mean to give. All right, activity F, we've got translations here. So since we've gone through the other stuff so quickly, we'll kind of work our way through these with the time that we have left. And hopefully that means I can dig a little bit deeper into each one of them. So number 1 here, again, we start off with a Hebrew sentence. I'm not demanding, but I'm anticipating that this first word is going to be either a temporal clause or phrase introducing the verb, or it's going to be the main verb itself. So as I look at it here, the first thing I notice immediately is this T suffix. This T suffix I'm used to seeing on a Qal Perfect 1CS verb. Okay, so if I take that off, I get Yaqol. Yaqol is the lexical form that I learned for a verb that means to be able, or he was able, or he is able. So this then would mean I am able. All right, so this is a verb. It's in the first person, so I wouldn't expect to have an explicit subject. So whatever comes next is probably not going to be my subject. The next word that I have here, likro, this is, I guess you could ask yourself what jumps out to you here. You might see a verbal root in this word immediately. You might not. What I see is that it starts with a lamed hirik and then the next letter has a shavah. That tends to happen when you have a lamed preposition, all right? Remember, lamed preposition with its shavah, when it comes up against another letter with shavah, that first shavah has to become a hirik here. And so this is lamed preposition on something else. Well, what do lameds attach to? They attach to nouns for sure, but they also attach to infinitive constructs. But remember, we said that infinitives are verbal nouns, so it makes sense. All right, so is this a noun or is this an infinitive construct? Well, sometimes actually there may not be a difference in form, but here we can see that the shavah holum pattern is indicative of an infinitive construct. And so if we take this root kara is to, basically means to call out, but kara is also a verb that gets used for to read. Now, the reason why that is because oftentimes in the ancient world, you didn't just sit and read silently to yourself. Usually when someone read, they were reading in public or something like that, they would be reading aloud. So that would be referred to as calling rather than like reading. But my point is you can translate this as to read or to call out, depending on the context. And what we see here is that the object of this verb is a book. And so it makes sense to translate this as to read. So it says here, I am able. And then this infinitive construct is functioning as a complementary infinitive. The complementary infinitive completes the verbal idea. So I am able, you're able to what? Like that feels like an incomplete verbal idea, to be able to do what? I am able to read, okay? What are you able to read? I am able to read et, again, definite direct object marker. Hey patak dagesh is our definite article. We take that off, we get sefer. Sefer is the word for book, scroll, document. So I am able to read the document hakodesh. I'm sorry, kodesh is the kodesh is the noun, kadosh is the adjective. So hakadosh. Kadosh here means holy. It's got the definite article, so it agrees and it comes after its noun, and so this would be attributive. I am able to read the holy scroll or the holy document. All right, so let's take a look and see how Futato translates this. I am able to read the holy book. What he's pointing out here, stative verbs are, I would say, often present tense. What he means is you wouldn't have to translate this I was able, even though it's in the perfect conjugation. There are some linguistic reasons why the stative lexemes, stative verbs that have stative meaning, some reasons linguistically why those don't follow the same rules in the perfect versus imperfect. You just need to know that the stative verbs can often be translated as present tense even if they're in the perfect conjugation, okay? All right, number 2, we've got, again, I'm going to anticipate that this first word is a verb. I'm not going to demand it. But as I look at it, it's got 4 letters. Hebrew verbal roots have 3, so something is extra. What's extra? Do we ever add a hey to the end of a verb? Well, we do that in the Qal Perfect 3FS, but we add a comets hey, not a segel hey. When else do we add a hey? We haven't really seen any other situations. Furthermore, this segel hey also is often indicative of a third hey verb in the Qal Imperfect or in a Qal Active Participle. So let's see what else we've got here. We do have a holum, which may be indicative of a participle, but we still have too many letters for this to be a participle because the segel hey in a third hey participle assumes that the hey is part of the root. And if the hey is part of the root, then this would be ava, and the holum would need to be on the aleph, not the yod. This is a situation where we have a third hey with a yod prefix, and we're used to seeing a hirik in the prefix of the Qal Imperfect, but here we have a holum because this is one of those special one aleph verbs that like to change the prefix vowel. And so this is the Qal Imperfect 3ms form of ava. Remember, ava means he will, well, not ava, yoveh means he will want or he will be willing. And then laleket, after that, this looks a lot like an infinitive construct, segel tav, infinitive construct of a one yod, which is actually a one hey, this is halach, with a lamed preposition on it. So this is not going to be the explicit subject of yoveh. This is going to probably be a complementary infinitive. We talked before about how yochal will often take a complementary infinitive to be able to. Anytime you have like a gloss of a Hebrew verb where the gloss ends in to, so be able to, be willing to, those are verbs that may take a complementary infinitive. So here, he will be willing to what? To halak, to go. So again, Qal infinitive construct from halak. Halak behaves like a one yod vav in the infinitive construct, so we get the segel tav pattern with the first root letter dropping out. And then the lamed would be a lamed shavah, but because this lamed is open, it doesn't have a syllable closing it, and it's right before the accented syllable of leket, not leket, but leket. Hebrew really wants a pre-tonic, pre-accent open syllable to have a not a short and not a reduced vowel, and so that's why you get the comments here. All right, so he will be willing to go. El is a preposition, usually directional preposition to or toward. El beit avicha. So to house of, beit is the construct form of bayit, house, to house of avicha. Avicha is av, father, and when we have av in the construct, when we're adding a suffix to it, it takes this hirik yod ending. This does not indicate that av is plural. Av and ach both take this hirik yod construct marker, but that doesn't mean that they're plural. Okay, if this were plural, it would be avotecha, avotecha, avot plural with the echa ending. But this is just father of you, masculine singular. So he will be willing to go, or he will want to go to the house, because avicha is definite. Even though it doesn't have a definite article, it's definite because it has a possessive suffix, which makes it definite. So to the house of your father. He will be willing to go to the house of your father. And Futato translates that as to your father's house. Number 3, yarenu. Yarenu, again, anticipating a verb here. I see the new suffix. The new suffix occurs on the Qal perfect 1CP, and if I take that off, I get yare, which is the lexical form of a verb that I have learned. Yare means he feared or he was afraid, and in the 1CP, it means we were afraid. La avor, avor is from avar. All right, so la avor, again, we've got another lamed preposition. Here we've got a kind of shavah. This is a hatef vowel, and so it's what's called a composite shavah. And the reason for that is because the ayin doesn't like a shavah, and so it gives you the hatef patach. And the lamed is actually just, it would be a shavah here if it weren't for, Hebrew doesn't want shavah next to a composite shavah. And so instead of shavah, composite shavah, you're going to get short vowel that corresponds with the composite shavah. So obviously the patach is the short vowel that corresponds with the hatef patach. So this doesn't have a definite article or anything. This is just another lamed indicating a complementary infinitive. And so if avar is to pass through or to go over, I think, or to transgress, then we would have we were afraid to transgress. To transgress what? Et, this is our definite direct object marker. Torat, that indicates the feminine singular construct. So the instruction of Adonai, or the Lord, or Yahweh if you prefer. We were afraid to transgress the instruction of the Lord. Ki, probably because, but here it's introducing a explanatory clause. Because yishpot, all right, so yishpot, we've got a yod hirik prefix, that tells us Qal imperfect, third person. We've got no suffix, so it's 3ms. Because he will, if I take off the prefix, I get shafat, which is he judged. Because he will judge, and then I've got a definite direct object marker here, he will judge each of his servants. And we know servants is plural because we've got the yod on the pronoun suffix here, so each of his servants. We were afraid to transgress the instruction of the Lord because he will judge each of his servants, or all of his servants. All right, we are afraid, stative, to transgress the law of the Lord because he will judge all his servants. All right, number 4, we've got amru. Amru, that shurik here, it looks a lot to me like a Qal perfect 3CP form of amar. Amar is he said, so this would be they said. Now, ki after a verb of speech is probably introducing the content of that speech. This is a content conjunction here. So what did they say? Chatatem is going to be, this tem here indicates the Qal Perfect 2MP. So you have sinned. You all have sinned. This one is probably going to be causal rather than content, but we won't know that until we have the whole thing kind of parsed out here. You have sinned, and then either because or that or something. Lo, so this is going to negate whatever comes after it, and what comes after it is shmartem. Shmartem is the Qal Perfect 2MP of shamar. Shamar is he kept or he guarded, and so shmartem is going to be you all guarded, but you didn't guard. It gets negated because you did not guard. Guard what? Et, definite direct object marker. Ha, hey patak dagesh is the definite article here. Brit, the covenant. So they said, what did they say? They said, you have sinned because you have not kept the covenant. All right, and so he's going to translate that first key as kind of making this reported speech. They said that you sinned. They said that you sinned because. So here we've got key in two different functions. Again, if you translate key as that, I should say, then it's going to sound like reported speech in English. If you leave key untranslated, then it's going to sound like direct speech. All right, number 5. All right, number 5, we've got Natse. Again, we've got 3 root letters, it looks like, but this doesn't make any sense for Qal Perfect. It doesn't make any sense for infinitive. So these must not be the root letters. There's something extra here hiding a missing letter. Aleph never gets added, so Aleph is part of the root probably, but Nun does get added. Nun gets added in the Qal Perfect, or sorry, the Qal Imperfect 1CP, and the Seri Seri pattern tells me Qal Imperfect 1CP of a 1 yod vav. And so if I put the yod in here, Yatsa, I get he came out, or he came forth, or he went forth, but the Qal Imperfect 1CP would be we will come forth, or we will go forth from Ha'ir, from the city, Lishmoa. Lishmoa, I see Lamed Hirik Shava. Lamed Hirik Shava gives me this idea of a Lamed preposition. So if I take off the Lamed Hirik, I get Shmoa. Now that I have a Shava Holam pattern. I do have a patah here, but it makes sense because I've got an ayin which prefers an A-class vowel. So if I take off the to preposition, I get Shama, which is he heard, but this is the infinitive construct, so it's going to be to hear. We will come forth from the city to hear or to listen to El, to, Ha-Navi, the prophet, Esher, which, or the prophet who, Darash. Darash is to seek or to inquire, he sought. The prophet whom he sought, or the prophet who sought. Which way is it? Well, we have to let context decide. Is it we will come forth from the city to listen to the prophet whom he sought, or is it the prophet who sought Yahweh? The Lord, Adonai. The second one is what makes sense. So the prophet who sought. Asher here is the subject of Darash, the prophet who sought the Lord. Number 6, we've got Zavoach. Zavoach is the Qal infinitive absolute. We see the kametz under R1. We see the holam vav theme vowel. So this is Zavach, he slaughtered, but this is the infinitive absolute, which means it's going to piggyback off of another verb, and that verb is Tizbach. Tizbach is the Qal imperfect 3fs or 2ms of Zavach. So this is either she will surely slaughter or you will surely slaughter. Zavachim, this is the plural of Zevach, which is sacrifice. So it's not an explicit subject. This is actually the object, the direct object. It's not a definite direct object. So this is she will surely slaughter or you will surely slaughter sacrifices tehorim. Tehorim, if we take off the hirik yod mem, this is tahor. Tahor is the word for pure. It's an adjective. And so because tehorim agrees with its noun, indefiniteness, neither one has the definite article, so that is an agreement, and it comes after its noun. This is probably attributive. So she will surely or you will surely slaughter pure sacrifices. Lifnei is, you can kind of memorize this as a phrase. This is the lamed preposition on pnei. Pnei would be like the face of. In Hebrew, I know it's plural, the faces of, but it would translate in English as the face of. Two faces of would be before the face of Adonai, before the face of the Lord. All right, so Lifnei Adonai, ki kadosh hu, because holy is he is holy. All right, and then we'll do one more here because I'm actually running out of time, but we'll go ahead and do this long one. So we've got Bashach, oh boy, Bashach Habam. B'shah chavam. There's no dagesh here. So b'shah chavam. And actually, that's not it either. This is, okay, so let's just stop here, because this is a great example of how it can be tricky when you've got your rules of Shavah, your rules of dagesh, and your rules of kametz chatuf, but you kind of each one relies on the other. And so how do you pin down, is this a silent Shavah? We need to know it's silent in order to know that this is kametz chatuf. But we know that it's not a silent Shavah, because if it were a silent Shavah, then the following bait would have a dagesh, because it would be coming after a closed syllable. So that tells us that this is a vocal Shavah. I think this is a typo, because I don't think that this is meant to be. I think this is an infinitive construct with a 3MP suffix and a bait prefix, prepositional prefix. But if that's the case, then this has to be a kametz chatuf. That's just the way that infinitive constructs, when they take a suffix, the O class R2 vowel actually shifts back to R1. And because that's a kametz chatuf, this has to be a silent Shavah. It has to close the syllable, which would mean that this should have a dagesh. So if you didn't know that, you would be very confused here. But I think this is a typo. Now, that said, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. So if I'm right, let's go ahead and translate it. So this would be the infinitive construct of shakav. I think shakav is to lie with. It's been a while since I've seen that one, shakav. So in or when lying with them, balayla, bait preposition with the patach, but I feel like this should have a dagesh too, because I think this would be in the night or in the evening. When lying with them in the evening, lo yira'u. Yira'u is from yara. It's going to be 3CP, Qal imperfect. You will not be afraid, you will not fear, because Eloheihem, boy, I'm glad we did this one. Eloheihem, this would be Elohim, but it's got the hem suffix for 3MP, because their God, Yishmor, Shamar, Qal imperfect 3MS, because their God will watch, or not watch, sorry, will keep or guard, et, definite direct object marker, what will he keep or guard? Nafshotehem. So this nafshotehem, nafshot, the souls of them, their souls. So if I'm correct, we've got two missing dageshim here. It should be something like when they lie down with them. Maybe this suffix indicates like reflexivity or something, but when they lay them down, when laying them down at night, in the night, they will not be afraid, because their God will guard their souls. What does Futato say? When they lie down at night. Okay. Okay, so here is going to be the subject. That's what I should have said when I said reflexive. So it is the subject of the action of the infinitive. The action of the infinitive is to lie down. They, 3MP, are lying down. When they lie down in the night, I think there should be a dagesh here. Otherwise, this should just be a shavah. They will not be afraid, because their God will guard their souls. All right. I got 4 minutes. I'm going to do one more. All right, so here we go. Number 8. Na'avod. Na'avod. This is avad with the noon prefix, but it doesn't have a hirik. Well, again, that's because certain one gutturals don't want to take a shavah, which we usually see in the first root letter of a Qal imperfect. So this is going to be Qal imperfect 1CP of avad. Avad is to perish. So this would be we will. Is it to perish? Avad. Avad. No, it's tricky. Avad with the aleph is to perish, or he perished. Avad with the ayin is to serve. Man, find a way to get those. Think of it this way. I see the ayin. The ayin kind of looks like it's like kneeling down. And so I think of kneeling as serving. I don't know. It obviously didn't work because I didn't put that together here. But avad is going to be this. So we will serve. What will we serve? Whom will we serve? Et Adonai. We will serve the Lord. Tzivaot. Tzivaot is... this indicates, Tzivaot is a noun. It is the plural form of tzava, and tzava is host or army. So we will serve the Lord of armies. Kol, each of, or all of. Yame is going to be the masculine plural construct form of yom, yom, which is day. So all of the days of Kayenu. Kai is going to be life. Kaye, lives. Kayenu, of us. All of the days of our lives. Ki, because tovhu, he is good. Good is he. We will serve the Lord of hosts all of the days of our lives because good is he, or he is good in English. All right, that does it. I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. But this was a lot, and we got through it in pretty short time. So again, I hope that's helpful for you. Don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions. Have a great week. Thanks, guys.